Hello, hello, my beloved Wiccan gods and goddesses. Mwah! It's been a long minute. Welcome to Love, Truth, and Beauty. This is episode 367. And in today's video, it's been a long while. I am continuing my population of 58 or more videos, reading aloud a translation that went from the Russian to Arabic to English of Hacking the Technogenic System by Vadim Zelen, who brought transurfing to the universe. Now, we hope that Vadim translates this book to English very soon, but until he does that, we will talk about it in English from other translations with the personal efforts of my friends Mohil Jawad and Theodora Salvia, who took it upon themselves to take on the task of sharing its wealth of knowledge, particularly during this time in our human history. So I'm doing my part to share this invaluable information so that it can be integrated into knowledge and further integrated into wisdom. So grab your favorite beverage, sit back, and allow me to read to you chapter 27 of Mohil Jawad and Theodora Salvia's translation of Hacking the Technogenic System. This chapter is entitled The Law of Luring Power. We have seen the previous chapter how the simple and ordinary procedure, such as preparing living water, can be an exercise of intention. Okay, we're talking about intention all the time. There are things in our lives that delight the soul, and always besides them are obligations and routine actions that are not pleasant to the heart, and therefore there is no desire to perform routine work because it is like a weight on the soul. But it is difficult for a person to overlook his inactivity and laziness, and this is also difficult and heavy work. It is unproductive because you will not feel satisfied or comfortable by doing this. As you certainly know, there is no point in procrastination. And as for inactivity, it will make you more and more tired. The question in this context is, how can we deal with the state of inactivity? Because overcoming idleness is an impossible thing. And if you perform the routine work by saying, I can, the idleness will not necessarily go away because the obligation remains the same. And it is not important if this obligation is a commitment to others or to yourself. There's no cure for lethargy, but only this: do the work that causes you to let go from the bottom of your heart and with all the giving you can, but do not exaggerate in forcing yourself, and do not burden yourself with more than you can handle, but do it with all your heart. Somehow deceive yourself and pretend this. Turn the duty into passion and do this consciously and intently. And in this case, the lethargy must pass, and you can be sure and convinced. And if you did not know the secret before, I will try to explain why this happens. Now, the state of idleness or inactivity is a state of stagnant energy, and there's an obstacle in the way of energy or a barrier that holds it. And if there is no movement, then there is no energy, and vice versa. If there is no energy, then there is no desire to do anything. So it is an empty cycle, my friends. But when you start to move, in spite of everything, the shock occurs and the engine starts, albeit with slow turnings. The energy feeds the intention, so the intention generates the movement, and so on, according to the chain of action and reaction. But this is not enough. If you see in your work any burden, then here the intention will not be enough, and therefore the idleness will remain, and the work will not give you happiness, and the result will not be fine. But if you begin to perform your work actively with vitality, no matter how ordinary or simple this work is, then additional energy will appear from where you do not know. You are not required to make special efforts because there are only two ways. Either you do the work when you are forced, or you do it honestly and sincerely. But in the first option, you will spend the bulk of your energy on overcoming the state of inactivity, which can be overwhelming. And in the second option, the energy comes on its own. But where does it come from? The faucet of an internal force opens, or in other words, the faucet of an outer intention, which is precisely the force that the Jedi talked about in Star Wars. But it was not limited to this only, of course. And you do not think that it is just a fantasy, because the power actually exists. But what is it? And what does it represent? The Jedi is a monastic, spiritual, and academic organization that is ancient and fictional and appears in the Star Wars films and series, and has emerged after the Battle of Yavin and the destruction of the Death Star. Jedi members are a group of people, including polymaths, teachers, philosophers, doctors, diplomats, and warriors, whose work is focused on helping the poor and fighting enemies. So that's just an aside. So if we simplify reality and see it just as movement in a celluloid, and it is projected into a device, then the force is the moving motor that rotates the projector. And the task of this force is to push this reality and move it constantly in order that there is no stopping station, because it is not permissible to be a single moment of stopping matter, void, force, motion, as well as time as a secondary side effect. They all result from motion, and all these are absolute things. And these are the primary elements of our world, and they did not originate and did not disappear at any time, but they did exist and still exist since ancient times. Every social individual has his own cinematic tape, cinematic film, which is the space of his world through his thoughts and actions. A person, in one way or another, displays his movie film on his projector. And here's one of them, deliberately, consciously, honestly, sincerely, and through unity of mind and spirit, at some point is creating his own little personal film, own personal movie as a part of a larger film. And with this work, he is paving the way for the mission of the force. And if the force does this thing, it will go out and respond to the call for help. And it does not do that because of greed or anything, not for a reason, but because this is its nature, and this is the property of strength. An intrinsic impulse causes an intrinsic response. It is not in vain that ancient magicians, masters of martial arts, would force their disciples to perform routine work that had nothing to do with the daily practice of which they worked. They can wash the street automatically without any thought, but at the same time, you can do your work as if it was a magical act. So wash until something is clear in your mind, and until you understand what you are doing and how. To illustrate how this case works, I will give some examples from my personal experience, which are as follows. Example number 1. The subject of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union was one of the basic subjects that must be studied in the University of Physics and Science, and it was an essential subject for success and for a job after graduating from university. Teaching the subject was brutal torture, but the teacher who taught the subject was the opposite for the students, because he was having a great dose of pleasure as he played the role of the spectator in the show that is presented in the circus. And at the same time, he was playing the role of Pilate in court. You get me? The situation for me was unbearable, and I found myself in front of the following dilemma. I cannot and do not want to study. And at the same time, I did not want to fail. There's nothing heavier on the soul than for a man to find himself under the fire of compelling necessity, right? This condition was beyond my patience and endurance, and was indistinguishable from slavery on ancient ships. I made up my mind at the time to prepare to study the subject as if it was the best subject to my heart, and not through a method as I can, quote unquote, but in a way that the more it becomes worse, the more it becomes better. Consequently, the situation changed, and I became diligent in the subject and excelled at it. Now, this situation led me to a very interesting discovery. You can rent yourself. And if you do it seriously, it becomes very easy. It wasn't clear where the ease came from, but there was a fact as clear as crystal. Slave labor on ancient ships was in a way transformed into a creative process. And now no one is forcing you to do anything, but you are the one who does everything according to your will and freely. And here, the work will not be heavy on the soul because your freedom is in your hands. And what a wonderful thing that is. Example 2. There's another and similar example, but this time from military life. The system is one of the military exercises was that whoever arrives last, he washes the stairs. And this system was like the system of slavery. I decided to pretend to be late. So every time I would be the last to arrive. I was doing this while having a lot of fun with the cleaning fluid, the brush, the broom, the mop, the bucket of water, and a little masochism. And it really turned out to me that the worse the situation becomes, the better it becomes. And I was finally relieved that I was free. But the officers were weary and irritated, and they looked at me as if they were saying, "You should surrender at some point." But it was clear from my appearance that instead of suffering, it was clear that I was enjoying. If the old mechanism no longer works, then what can they do about me and the situation? And here the change was not delayed, and the old working system was changed, and the stairs were cleaned according to the shift system. And then we moved to a new military barrack. At that time, I didn't realize what I had done, but I said to myself, wow, even that system can be smashed. Example 3. Now, another scene from the life of military service. It has been a long time, and we were running through a rugged terrain, and they were carrying all the military equipment with us, and the weather was hot and dusty, and our throats dried up, and we almost stopped breathing, and indeed, we were about to die, but the end was still far away. We were led by a big-bodied officer, and he was the trainer, to be more precise. He wasn't driving us, but was making fun of us to his liking and was telling us, "Girls, I will make you men." He clearly admired himself and felt superior, even over himself, but he jogged lightly, did not carry military equipment like the rest of us, and wore athletic shoes. I was exhausted like the others, and I was only thinking how this suffering would end as soon as possible, but at the same time, I was feeling wrong and perhaps humiliated, and saying to myself, what a shame. Look where we have come. Is this going to make me a man? Is there anything worse than this? Here I remember the rule of the samurai. Live as if you were dead and as if you're done with yourself. Then I also remembered how they used to train. They would run until they were tired, then do the well-known push-up exercise about 300 times, then resume running again, then do push-ups again, then keep running, and so on. But at the end of the day, they stop. But in the end, they stop and can do no more because more is simply impossible. At that time, the sensei, who is the trainer teacher, says, well, this is enough now, or not. Aren't we fighting soldiers? Everyone shouts in one voice, Banzai, which means 10,000. Then they do push-ups about 300 times and start running again. But I can't, and I no longer have any strength. But they, who are they? They are the samurai after all, and we are already dead. And now I'm dying in the literal sense of the word, and I'm dying like a dog dies. But this damn officer, he's a jerk. Here, I got very angry. Well, I also died like a samurai, and I'm done. And that's what I thought to myself. And now let's run, officer, who is like a repeating drum. At that exact moment, I felt as if a force had caught me and flew back to me again, and I had caught the same feeling that gave me lightness. After a while, I turned back and I saw that officer trying to run and follow me, but that strength that the officer had only a minute ago is now transferred to me. There is no doubt that this officer was extremely angry and oppressive, but he pretended as if nothing had happened. Example number 4. Here I will speak on a historical example in the Middle Ages. The Zaporozhye Cossacks had amazing magical experiences. When one of them was captured by his enemies would try to break his will by various kinds of torture and then cut off his head. But the prisoner here was saying, why don't you just cut off my head? Put me at the stake, flay my skin while I'm alive, and then we'll see. And when they did all this to the captive, his spirit would pass into the enemy's body. But it is not necessary to lure force by such horrible means, and such situations are no longer present in abundance these days. Holding onto the force is something that is possible in normal everyday life. Remember, for example, the well-known question, is that all there is to it? Example, hey guys, give me your attention for 1 minute. The breakfast in the children's park will be canceled. We will board the spaceship and go to Mars. Everyone should carry his space spoon with him. Hold on tight, because the ship will not return to Earth before lunch. The lesson from this example is, if you are in a situation where there is a compelling necessity, or you are forced to do a certain behavior, or you yourself are forcing yourself to perform certain obligations, then here you try to transfer all the external burden to your hidden intention. Now picture yourself gloomy and walking from the caravan of slaves, or imagine them taking you to hard labor. And now you woke up, you rose up and harassed the people who took advantage and said to them, give me the whip, because you don't know how to use it. And now change the status from they are compelling me to the display of your free will and I'm on my own. Children often act like this because they feel the presence of power. When you start spinning your flexible reality engine sharply, the force turns to you, pays attention to you, and joins you. So if the work must be done in all cases, then here you have no other way out but to perform this work consciously, masterfully, with all your heart and to the fullest. And when you make every effort, the spirit automatically comes to join you in your pursuit of the goal. In other words, the power joins you. And when any work is done with integrity and sincerity, it will be much easier than to succumb to the difficulties of this work. And he does not know this. And he who does not know this will spend his whole life tormented and resisting compelling necessity. But if you use the law of luring power, you can say goodbye to routine and idleness forever. Simple actions such as preparing living water, for example, in this case, acquire the feature of strength and ease. If you perform this act consciously and with all your heart, this work will not be just a mechanical movement, but it will be a magical work and is performed with the participation of force. And when this practice becomes a habit, then strength will always be your companion. And as long as power is with you, you will be able to create masterpieces. So the summary of this chapter is the following. Number 1, the state of idleness or laziness is the state of rest of the energy, and it is a hindrance. And the absence of movement means absence of energy. Number 2, the only way to overcome laziness is to give your soul to the thing that causes you laziness, and thus perform the routine work in the best possible way and with all the effort you can, but provided that you do not burden yourself with more than its energy, but only do it from all your heart. Number 3, you can rent yourself, but if you do it with all your power, you will make everything easier for you. Number 4, transform the event from they compel me to showing your free will. In other words, I myself and of my own accord. Number 5, When efforts are made, the spirit automatically comes to make its contribution, and the spirit joins. This means the power joins. Number 6, when you spin the energy of your flexible reality, the force turns to you, pays attention to you, and thus joins you. And if your energy is not enough for yourself, the law of alluring power can create an additional source for it. Okay, my loves, that is my speech. I hope you enjoyed my reading of chapter 27, the law of alluring power. Next chapter, chapter 28, I will be recording that later this afternoon, entitled Funeral Prayer on the Body of Another Person. Sounds intriguing, right? Okay, so please help me grow my channel by giving this video a thumbs up and leaving a comment in the comments box below or in private. Share this video with your communities, friends, family members, and on social media platforms you feel would benefit from this content. And please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, selecting the all setting so that the YouTube will let you know when I upload next. And if you find value, enjoy, or benefit from my content and videos, won't you please consider supporting my work through a donation? My PayPal link is below, or you can buy me a coffee through my coffee.com link. And I thank you all so much for hanging out with me, with your participation, focus, attention. I really do appreciate it. I cannot do this without you, and I do this for those of you who know that you are so much more than what the Matrix tries to define you to only be. So until next time, my dear hearts, always act from love, outside of the Matrix, from your center screen, your awakened center, composing a new reality, quantum jumping all your lifelines so that you can be the love that you are. You can share your love, create, make art, make music, make love, and you can help me repopulate the true quantum field creation field universe. Here's to love, truth, and beauty, my beautiful waking gods and goddesses. Mwah!